All right, everyone, welcome. I'm really excited for this interview today. I'm here with Gwendolyn Evans with Wyze. Her and I have gotten into some really cool conversations in the last week or so, and I was very, I was very pleased, and absolutely, my brain was titillated when having a conversation with you last time, Gwendolyn, because you have built a really meaningful community over there at Wyze. And I think that your kind of superpower that I kind of gathered from you was the intentionality by which you've built these communities. And so it's great to have you today. And thanks for joining me on this interview. Could you give our listeners a little bit of just a little bit of background on Wyze and how you got into the community space?
Absolutely. First things first, I'm actually a non-binary trans person. I use gender-neutral pronouns such as, but not limited to, they, them, and their. But I got into working with Wyze before we launched our first product. Wyze is in the smart tech sphere. We have a bunch of different products that work together in an ecosystem. So our idea is we want to democratize smart tech. We want to make wonderful technology available to everybody. Because, for an example, I'm a millennial, and not to just play up the stereotype, I never thought I'd have access to smart technology. That was such a luxury expense as far as I was concerned 3 years ago. And the idea that you can have a $20 smart cam that is actually really great and constantly adding features just absolutely blew my mind. So I'm incredibly passionate about this space. It allows for greater accessibility. It allows for people to have better security in their homes, to be able to streamline their existence and make things so much more comfortable and happy for themselves and their families. And I live for that. So I actually was a community manager for a couple of extracurricular type things back when I was in college. So I was the Bardic Mistress, gendered word, but kind of a gendered type of group in a lot of ways, because we do historical reenactment type stuff. It's a little bit different though, it's very anachronistic. And I did in-person meetings as well as had this online Facebook group. And then there was another group that I was working with that went along with my minor. I have a minor in human sexuality. And this was a group that talked about safety and events, and we did a lot of education. So when I came to Wyze, I bombed my interview. I really thought that they were not going to hire me. And then I was very pleasantly surprised, but nobody knew where I would really fit. They hired me because they liked me and they thought that I'd be an asset to the team. I've proved them right so far, but we didn't have anybody monitoring our communities. They had a Facebook group that was primarily for beta testing before we did our first launch. And other than that, there really wasn't much there. We'd set up our marketing channels, but nobody was running them. Well, I'm a millennial and I feel pretty comfortable with communities. And my major is actually in psychology with a focus on social and personality psychology. So I am very well equipped to work with bunches of different people and see these social interactions and help guide things. So I started with that Facebook group, and for a while until we started hiring other people, I was working with our Facebook business page, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, our Reddit. We eventually got a forum and we had that Facebook group.
So a lot of different community channels, a lot of different threads. I don't think that, the community industry is just blowing up right now. And I think that a lot of community managers and a lot of brands their story is no different. People are trying all kinds of new things. But you had the situation where you've got these islands of communities that you now have to either manage or consolidate. So what was the mindset there? I mean, you come into this and you're like, this is fantastic that we're getting this traction in these different channels. But what did you learn when you were first looking in all these places?
So this was my first big job out of college, and I did not have experience in the business world, and there was definitely some adjusting that I had to do because where before a lot of my community management was very much the social interaction, now I'm learning how to do tech support, and now I'm speaking for a business. Now I'm seeing people quoting things that I'm saying to customers in our communities in news reports. And
Mm,
so when there's that quote, all the world is a stage, and that is very true with online community management. Anything that you say at any time could actually be saved, copied, referenced, whatever. Nothing is gone if you delete it because you don't know who saved it. So you have to be incredibly intentional with everything that you do. And when we were looking at all of these communities and all of these areas, what we noticed was that the cultures are different. So consolidating these communities is not necessarily for the best. You actually would lose a lot by doing that. So with Wyze, our goal is to meet people where they are. So if somebody is over on the Facebook world, we want to have that group. We want to have the Facebook business page. If somebody really enjoys Twitter and they do that for their tech support, we're there for them. There's a lot of Redditors out there, front page of the internet. It's a super cool culture, and we have a presence there. And so when we are hiring our newer community managers, we actually look for community fit. We want people who are passionate about these communities that they're going to be working with and who understand the culture of the platform and how to exist within it. Because we're not just leading these communities, we're members, we're part of it. And we want it to be healthy and happy and fun and engaging, just like anybody else.
oh, interesting. So the concept here is that people have their preferences. Those preferences and personalities drive certain cultures. And so you're actually saying, let's not consolidate, but let's maintain
Mhm.
these different channels that we've created and that exist. Have you added additional channels than what you found when you came in?
So mostly actually just the forum. We started out without one, and people, especially over on Reddit and Twitter, kept asking us, can you please make a forum? Please have a forum. So we made one, and that worked fairly okay. But a couple years ago, we switched over to Discourse instead, and as our forum management platform, and that's been great. So other than that, we do have a little bit of a bandwidth issue. So we have this explosive growth in our communities, which is fantastic. And our team is growing, which is great. But if you consider adding a new community, you need to make sure that you can support it because communities take a lot of guidance. It's not just being in there and responding, and it's not just adjusting any posts that are breaking the community guidelines or removing them or removing people who are being toxic. There's also a level of leadership and guidance. You need to make sure that your community guidelines are updated and that they fit well. You need to make sure that you have an eye on the sentiment and that you're present, that you're engaging. So if you make a new community and then you do not adequately support it, it's probably not going to take off. And if it does, it's not really your community. And trying to step in and take more of a level of engagement and control later on may not be entirely successful.
So before we get into some of these more deeper discussions about community management, can we back up a little bit and say, right now, I think companies are beginning to see the vision. They're trying new things. They are starting to see the value of community. But from your perspective, why community? Why should brands care about building a community?
I'm incredibly lucky. My first big job out of college is at a company that really puts the customer at the core of everything we do. We want to connect. Any decision that we want to make with the intention of treating our customers like our friends. And that's been really great. But I feel like everybody should be doing that. I know I'm biased, but when you look at it, if you are not responding to feedback from your customers, who are you making products for? Like, when you look at everything that you're doing, if you are not really in tune with your customer needs, it's really easy to miss the mark. But your communities can fit so much more than that. And one of the discussions that we had previously was about customer support. So customer support is incredibly important for a company. If you send out a product or anything and people need help, you need to have somewhere that they can go. But that can often be seen as kind of a sunk cost. With communities, you can have these people who are really engaged, knowledgeable about your product, and even passionate about everything that you're doing, and they can actually deflect those ticket costs. So you end up with these experts who are helping people, walking them through steps, and many of them are incredibly experienced. We have people who are software engineers. We have people who have been setting up security systems for decades. There is so much that just absolutely astounding intelligence and helpfulness and kindness that exists out there in your customer base. And they want to be there. They want to help. They want to feel good and make a difference for people, just like anybody else. So if you have a position where they can actually do that, it's really great. And it gives you insights into everything that your customers are thinking, and you are able to put in surveys, you are able to talk to them, you can get really direct information about if there's a bug that is really stubborn and you're having trouble fixing it. You can have a very quick engagement with somebody who is testing out these fixes or these ideas and sending logs. Like, it's great. And we've gotten a lot of value out of our community, and not just the friendships we've made there. Like, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. So it's interesting because when you look at the reason why companies get into building communities, I think that a lot of the driving reason behind that is what you mentioned, which is trying to be more efficient with support.
Mhm.
But when they get into it and start doing it, it's so much more than that.
Mhm.
And I think that's where you're about to go, right?
Yep, you end up with these people who are in here for years. There are familiar faces that have become actually really close and trusted by us. And you really want that balance too. So it's very tempting to go in and just make this offload support area, but it gets boring for people. Your experts are going to see the same questions over and over and over, and it burns them out. So you need to make sure that there's something else that's engaging and interesting and will keep them there. Because if all you're doing is offloading your support costs and you're not giving them anything else that of worth, your community is likely going to die, or you're just going to get a toxic community where your experts, they leave.
Yeah, so it's about expert retention. So funny, two interesting stories. One, I was in client success for a really long time, and it was fascinating to see the persona of customers that leave or decide to churn.
Mhm.
And so I would hop on these calls where I'm trying to preserve a client. And I knew from the very beginning whether I could do anything or not. And it's interesting because somebody that was calm and told me that they're done, I'm like, I'm not going to win this.
Mhm.
But someone that was angry, the reason why they're angry is because they love the product and they're angry that it's just for some reason it's not working out for them.
Mhm.
And so that's where I think you from a community perspective, you can capitalize on this passion that people have for your products. And so, which leads me to my second story about actually Wyze. An uncle-in-law of mine has deployed Wyze products. He's a developer, and he's deployed Wyze products in his home. And I just was there during Christmas and just happened to, I asked the question, which opened the conversation. I am no expert on, smart technologies in my house. I've got a doorbell, and I've got a Nest and a couple other things.
Mhm.
I opened that door and he just went crazy about how he customized the products for himself in his house and how he set up the security and all this other stuff. And so, to your point, being able to create engaging, people are not only proud of of what they know about a product, but also how they use that product to meet their needs. So engaging those experts, um, it's kind of like having like a Pinterest, right? People go to Pinterest for ideas on how to use different products or how to solve different problems in their life. How do you maintain that interest over time? Like, what is it that you're doing to blow on that fire to make it bigger and create more engagement?
So a lot of those end up happening organically. Every so often, we'll make a post about, hey, so we love the creativity in our community. How do you plan to use this product? And that actually doesn't really capture the people you're talking about super effectively. Those tend to be somebody has just finished something, they're really excited about it, and they want to share it with everybody. And so they post. And when you get these really creative ventures that are awesome, you end up with a bunch of people feeling really inspired. And they'll talk about the things that they've been doing, or they'll talk about things that they're curious about trying, they'll ask for help. And so you really want to make sure that when somebody does something like that, step in, congratulate them, tell them how cool it is, because it is. Like, people do so much with our products and things that, well, I personally never would have thought of, but I feel inspired every day by the people in our community. So be excited with them. Like, my key advice when I start training new community managers is not just be sympathetic when people are experiencing difficulty. Like, you have to do that, but you need to be a mirror. If they're excited, be excited with them. If they're happy, you're happy too. Feed that energy.
Absolutely. Love it. Love it. So if we could kind of, in the last couple minutes here, one of the topics that we had chatted about previously, which I'm fascinated about, is what is some advice or what are some considerations you would put out there for people to think about when they think about building on the momentum of a community that's already kind of built itself organically, or when they're what's a roadmap that you could give somebody when they want to build a community themselves, or when a brand wants to become a community brand?
Mhm. So you mentioned earlier that you think my superpower is intentionality, and that's because that's my first step. And it's actually my first step with any problem. What do you want? The format, the form, everything that you do should be contributing to your main goal. And so making sure that you have a clearer vision of what you want to have happening is going to be your best friend. So when you have that, you can start working backward. And so I want this community to do X, Y, or Z. And maybe X is I want to see videos of people using my products. And I want to see a lot of people being able to quickly respond to folks. Well, this is going to tell you that whatever platform you use needs to have easy video sharing. And so that's going to help limit where are you starting your community. You need to make sure that your culture that you are trying to wade into is going to be a good fit. So Reddit, as an example, is really great for having its own super strong over platform culture, the Reddit etiquette. And then Facebook tends to be a little more free with that. So you need to figure out, what kind of hand do I want to have here? What kinds of people, what demographics do I want to be attracting? If you're wanting to get Gen Z real jazzed about everything, don't use Facebook. They don't really like Facebook. Facebook is for us older folks. If you want really tech savvy people, check out Reddit. Reddit is great for that. You can also set up your own forum for it. So when you have that intentionality and you know where you're going to be, now you can figure out, what guidelines do you want? What kind of things do you want to make sure are happening or not happening? Make sure that you are telling people what kinds of posts are welcome. Don't just tell them what they can't do. Give them examples of what they can do and should do, because you can tell people not to do things all day long, but then what? So you should lead by example and make sure that anything that you're putting out there is also contributing to the goal. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Great advice, Gwendolyn. Thank you so much for giving us some of this advice today. It was a pleasure speaking with you, and we'll be anxious to keep track of what you're doing over there. And I'm sure we'll do a follow-up interview at some point.
I would enjoy that. Thank you so much. This is fun.
Awesome. Thanks.
Have a great day, everybody.
Yay. Awesome. Cool. So I'm going to stop this.